Say yes to summer and get cash back on many of your favorite brands with PayPal. Say yes to those pink flamingo floaties you've been eyeing online. Get them and make a splash with that cash back. Say yes to the third barbecue in a row this week. Grill up those burgers and earn that extra cheese. Say yes to that last-minute road trip. You deserve it. Pay at the pump and fuel up your wallet with PayPal. Say yes to summertime fun and all the cash back that PayPal has to offer. Download the PayPal app. Redeem points for cash and other options. Terms apply.
Getting ready to take on spring? Make your first move with the reliable performance and power of Steel battery tools. From hedge trimmers and mowers to string trimmers and more, right now you can save $50 on select battery tool sets. Real Steel. Offer valid on select AK system sets through June 16, 2024. See participating retailer for details.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant Prime.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live. Citak and I were wearing... Hello, and welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live. Citak and I were wearing the same shirt. I thought it looked silly, so I appeared to throw me a jacket at the last second. I didn't get it on in time. You play those games where you're trying to, open the door before, the fake guy behind you is trying to get you. Well, I got killed. I got shivved in the back. So that's where we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Of course, if you're listening to this and not watching the video, you have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's just fine.
Don't worry about it.
Hope everybody's doing well today. Welcome. First day of training camp in the books. Short practice, only about 90 minutes. No pads, obviously, just shorts and T-shirts with helmets. So that's where we are, and a lot of news, Matt, and we'll start with the big news, and then we'll kind of cycle our way down through what happened in practice as well, and we'll take a lot of your calls at 201-939-4513. First and foremost, we already knew that Daniel Jones was not on PUP when the Giants made those announcements yesterday. Evan Neal was. We'll talk about that as well, but got Joe Shane and Brian Dable talking this morning, and he is cleared to go full. He's going to take every snap with the ones as long as the knee holds up just fine. They expect it to, and he was out there today against as live of a pass rush as you can have during training camp, and he was out there doing everything with the ones.
Yeah, it was great to see. There was a report, earlier this week, I believe from ESPN, saying that Daniel Jones said that, he's been cleared and ready to go, but still, it's great to see the GM and the head coach actually say it themselves that he's fully cleared, participating in team drills, and yeah, sure enough, once practice started, he was out there, looked like normal Daniel Jones. I mean, there was one play where he scrambled out of the pocket and sort of took off, ran down the field, and that's exactly what we've seen out of him since they drafted him in 2019. So that was great to see. Looks healthy. He spoke to the media after practice, spoke about feeling healthy, confident in his knee. He said he doesn't even think twice about it. He's just moved past the injury. And when he's out on the field, a lot of times we see players when they first come back be a little hesitant when they're coming back from a major injury like that. But Daniel Jones told the media that it's not even in his head, which, day one of training camp to have your quarterback coming off such a major injury and it clearly not being even the slightest of concerns to him, that is a great thing to see.
Yep, absolutely. It was, he threw a bunch of completions to Wanda Robinson, a bunch of completions to running backs throughout practice. Had 2 downfield passes to Malik Neighbors. One, he basically put right in Neighbors' breadbasket, and it was a drop. The other one, I thought Neighbors could have reached out and caught the ball. Maybe he didn't pick it up on the way out there, but he did try to get the ball down the field to Malik Neighbors a couple times. Someone that he said, even though they didn't have that many reps together in the spring, because he only did 7-on-7, that he's pretty comfortable with.
Yeah, they said they worked out at some point over the summer, or several points over the summer that they worked out. They're getting on the same page. Daniel Jones again didn't participate in any of the 11-on-11 drills during spring practices. He was out there for 7-on-7, so it's not like he hasn't thrown a pass to Malik Neighbors at a Giants practice before. But today was the first time he did it in 11-on-11 drills with the full offensive line, defensive line out there, and quarterback coming off a major injury, rookie wide receiver, it makes sense. It's going to take some time for them to really get on the same exact page, for Malik to learn, how Daniel, throws the ball, where he likes to place it, and vice versa. Malik telling Daniel, where he likes the ball thrown, what area, like of his body or whatever. So it's going to take some time for them to really mesh, but it's what you'd expect from a rookie wide receiver. But it's good to see them both just out on the field together from day one of training camp. They're going to both benefit from having hopefully a full training camp together. We'll see how much both guys play in the preseason, but as we spoke about last week, the joint practices that they're going to have in just a couple of weeks, I think will be very beneficial for both of those guys. So yeah, it's great. It was great to see both those guys just out there on day one.
Absolutely. Other piece of news, while Daniel Jones was healthy and ready to go, Evan Neal, the Giants announced, was put on the PUP list to start training camp. We had a phone call about this either yesterday or the day before, Pearson. I forget which show. But a fan called in and said, should they take the workout they had with an offensive lineman, at least a reported one, as an idea that Neal would be ready to go. And I said, look, I don't think they knew yet at that point because they don't report till Tuesday to take a look at the guys. But as it turns out, Neal did have to get put on PUP to start the year. Both Joe Shane and Brian Dable, Matt, did not indicate that they thought it would be very long before he is back. A week or two was, I think, a vague time frame they gave, a couple weeks maybe, but it all depends how his foot reacts to it. So they'll see. They'll work him back. Related to that, Jermaine Illuminor, we were told, was going to start out at right tackle with Aaron Stinney sliding in at left guard with that first team. And then, as the dominoes are just knocking each other down as we go, about halfway through practice, Jermaine Illuminor had to walk off the field with an injury that he suffered during one of those 11-on-11 snaps. Didn't look like a lower body thing, but we'll see when the Giants either later today make an announcement or tomorrow. Brian Dable, I'm sure, will talk about it when he speaks to the media, exactly what the details of the injury was. They brought the card out. He didn't take the card off the field. He walked off the field. So we'll see what the injury is. And then Josh Azudu slid in at tackle for Illuminor when he could not finish practice.
Yeah, so let's start with the first part.
Yep.
Evan Neal. Of course, the players reported yesterday, in an ideal world, he would have been cleared and ready to go, but I don't think that was necessarily the expectation. It seemed like it was sort of expected that they were going to be a little cautious with him to start, take it slow, make sure he's 100% before throwing him back out there. So him landing on the PUP list, really not too surprising. But, I mean, as you indicated, both Joe Shane and Brian Dable said that they really don't think he's going to be sidelined for that long. The exact words that they used were, he's not far off from being out there. We should see him somewhat soon. I don't think they gave it necessarily an exact timeline, but the way they were phrasing it, they don't expect him to be, not practicing for all of training camp. It seems like they do think he will be out there somewhat sooner rather than later.
And he was doing calisthenics on the side during
Yes,
practice.
he was on the sideline. It's not like he wasn't here, so that was good to see. He's making progress, they said.
The other note about Neal real quick before we jump onto the Illuminor part of it is that they said, and now we'll see if this changes with the Illuminor injury now, that when Neal gets back, they did not guarantee that he would slide back into right tackle. They basically said, well, we'll see how Illuminor does. If he's doing well out there, we might stick with that, and then we'll figure things out. So there wasn't a guarantee, and we've kind of talked about how training camp's really tight now. You got to make that decision quickly. So we'll see when he's healthy where he might slide in. Now with the Illuminor injury, that might complicate the process even further.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even before the injury, it seemed like that would be, I don't want to call it a complicated situation, but it would have been a good situation to have if, Illuminor was playing well at right tackle and Evan Neal came back healthy, ready to go and ready to compete with him. We'll have to see what happens with that situation now.
Yeah, they didn't flat out say Neal would get worked out at guard, but they didn't say he wouldn't get work at guard either. They kind of left it very nebulous as to how they would handle it.
Yeah, they didn't give a direct answer about that, which honestly, as we've come to get to know Joe and Brian over these last couple of years.
Brian especially.
Not that surprising that
no,
we didn't
not
get
at
a
all.
straight answer, especially on day one of training camp.
I was just happy they told us that Illuminor move out the right tackle. They didn't make us wait an hour to see it at practice.
That's true. And then, so on to Illuminor, from where we were standing on the sideline, couldn't really see what happened. It was on the opposite end of the line, and obviously there are about 20 humongous football players in the way between where we were standing and where Illuminor went down. We'll have to see. I mean, I don't think, as we just said with Brian Dable, I have a feeling that, when he speaks to the media tomorrow, he's not going to shed too much light on the situation.
Yeah, Charlotte Carroll, believe it or not, had a great view from the sidelines. You put a video up. Citak, I'm playing it for you. I don't know if you've seen this yet.
No.
You're playing for it right there. You kind of see a Dexter Lawrence arm seemed to kind of nail Illuminor right in the midsection. You can see it kind of right there, right?
Yeah, right in the ribs.
It kind of, no one wants to get hit by Dexter Lawrence. He's a gigantic human being. So that's again, it looks like kind of like a blunt force, contact type of injury to the midsection. So we'll see exactly what it is and how serious it is.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, fingers crossed it's not too serious. As we just mentioned, Illuminor was at least going to have a chance right at the start of training camp to compete and potentially win the starting right tackle position. Obviously, the injury today might throw a bit of a wrench into the plan. Right now, it's really just we'll have to wait and see situation. Hopefully, he's not sidelined for too long, if at all. And then he'll be, hopefully back out there soon competing at right tackle. And then, as I mentioned before, if Illuminor is, back healthy and playing at right tackle, and Evan Neal comes back healthy and is ready to go, that's a good situation to have. As we saw last year, having as many healthy and available offensive linemen as possible, that is especially for this Giants team, that would be like the ideal scenario. Having everyone healthy and having guys compete to see who earns the different positions.
That's the ideal scenario. Now, as of right now, it's a less than ideal scenario because the two guys that you would think would be your first and second right tackles, like we've talked about all off season long, and it proved out based on the fact that Illuminor was going to move out there, right? They're not available, and it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. Like you said, they weren't really specific on how long Neal was going to be out. We don't know about the Illuminor thing yet. So it's going to be Josh Azudu now, who had got time at left tackle in the spring. He got time at left tackle last year when Andrew Thomas got hurt. I don't think he's taken a ton of snaps at right tackle. I'd have to go back to his North Carolina snap counts. He's had a few, but if it's more than a couple handful, I'd be surprised. So he has to work out there now, and it's another delay in trying to get what's going to be your final offensive line alignment in there and get that chemistry working. It just pushes that back now at least a few days, maybe more, depending on how long Neal and Illuminor are going to be out.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely not ideal. You don't want it, especially on the very first day of training camp. But the one thing I will say is that, we spent all offseason, by the way, I'm just looking it up, in college, Azudu played 124 snaps at right tackle in 2020 and then 47 the year before.
All right, so about I'd say
a little under 2.
That's about 3 games worth.
Yeah.
2 to 3 games.
Not nothing, but
no,
clearly not as much as he has experience at some of the other positions.
Right.
But as we spoke throughout, since free agency, the Giants didn't just go out there and sign John Runyon and Jermaine Illuminor as starting offensive linemen, but they made it an emphasis to go out there and get depth on the O-line as well. I mean, as we saw, Aaron Stinney slid in as left guard when Illuminor kicked out to right tackle today. That was one of the depth pieces they brought in. They brought in guys like Austin Schlotman, Matt Nelson. So they have guys that have at least some level of experience starting on the offensive line. So again, it's definitely not ideal, but
yeah, I think at guard they're fine. It's the tackle situation that you have to worry about a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, you started this by mentioning the offensive lineman that was in for a visit the other day. He's another guard,
right? He's not a tackle.
So I don't wouldn't necessarily help the right tackle situation.
Well, I'm not breaking any news here, Matt. Come July 24th, there's not a ton of starting caliber offensive tackles just hanging out in the free agent market. That's not how the league works. That's not the position where there's a lot of extra guys. Just, we'll just go pick up a starter. It doesn't work that way.
Although Justin Pugh came right off the couch last year.
And had the offensive line play last year?
Well, as a unit, not great. He had his moments where he was at least solid, adequate. Wasn't going out there playing all pro level football, but
I'd like to avoid that situation again.
Of course, that would be the ideal scenario. You don't have to take someone off of the couch and throw them right into the fire.
All right, so let's do practice real quick, and then we already got 3 calls. I want to make sure we get to everybody who's on the line wanting to talk to us. We figured the phones would get pumped back up again as we start practice this week. It was great to see some of the familiar names on there that we haven't heard from in a while since the draft, really, and some of the spring practices. But not a ton. We mentioned it's a shorter practice, no pads. There's contact, but again, it's limited what you can do. It's kind of like a juiced-up OTA or mandatory minicamp practice from the spring. Offense, a lot of checkdowns. Defense, a couple plays down the field. There was a nice catch by Lawrence Cager from Drew Lock near the sideline.
Very nice catch.
Riley managed to get him out of bounds, though, so it was technically incomplete. He didn't get his feet in, but it was a nice throw towards the sideline. Good adjustment in the air by Cager to come down with the ball.
Yeah, that was probably the nicest offensive play of the day, even though it was...
Not probably.
Even though it would not have been actually a touchdown. He definitely came down out of bounds, but even though he knew he came down out of bounds, and he still got up and did one of those like flexing things because he knew just how impressive of a catch he had just made.
And there are officials at practice. It was ruled incomplete.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
And then offensively, we mentioned Wanda Robinson had a bunch of short catches. They had a bunch of throws to the running backs in the flat. All 3 quarterbacks did that. Then you have on defense, there was a nice pass breakup by Deontay Johnson. Ryder Anderson had a knockdown at the line of scrimmage. Darius Musa was in nice position in coverage on one play.
Yep.
The ball was caught, but he would have had a big hit afterwards. We mentioned the play by Riley to force it out of bounds. Caleb Hayes, I thought, had really nice coverage down the field on a receiver on one play to force an incompletion. So there were some defensive plays, including one where they forced a turnover.
Yeah, Jordan Phillips, who I've spoken about a lot as the guy who I think could earn that spot next to Dexter Lawrence. He batted a pass at the line of scrimmage, which sort of landed right into the breadbasket of Boogie Basham, who intercepted it, turned around, started running the other way. I don't know if if it would have been necessarily a pick six, but definitely was an interception and got some yardage returning it. That was definitely the highlight defensively of the day. It was a nice play. Alex Johnson, undrafted rookie safety.
I think he's listed as a defensive back.
Defensive back.
Yes.
He had a very nice pass breakup down the field, a play that looked like it was about to go for, a 20 to 30-yard touchdown, and he got his hands up there and broke the pass away. So that was nice. Dexter Lawrence, which I feel like we'll be saying this just about every day, got into the backfield for a pressure and would have had what most likely would have been a sack.
There were a handful of pressures, and it really came from up and down the line. There wasn't one guy that was in there all the time, but a lot of the guys kind of got in there a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like at least once every practice, Dex is going to do that. And then
especially without pads, by the way, when the offensive line can't be super duper physical with him, and he's just so big and quick, it's impossible to block him in these unpadded situations.
Yeah,
you got no help
for sure. And then one other thing that really, I guess, stood out to me, and it was just awesome to see, and I pointed this out to you when it was happening, was it was just great to see the reps between Andrew Thomas and Brian Burns. During these team drills, they were going at it on multiple occasions.
And now no pads.
No pads, so, it's still not 100% like the matchup that we will see a little bit later in the summer, but it was great to see. I mean, I would say both guys kind of held their own. There were plays where Thomas shut Burns down, and Burns really didn't get any sort of pressure at all, and there were other plays where Burns, I wouldn't say beat Thomas, but kind of got around him and forced the quarterback to, scramble out of the pocket and run towards the sideline. So we'll be seeing that matchup throughout the entire training camp all summer.
And we didn't see it much in the spring because Thomas didn't do hardly any team reps. So it was really the first time we saw that.
And as we spoke about all during the spring, you can't really get much from offensive linemen or defensive linemen during those practices. Brian Burns was like living in the backfield during the spring, but with the offensive line not really able to, hit him, that it doesn't really tell you much. Today was the first day, again, no pads, so it wasn't 100%, full action, but you could see Burns' just explosiveness. That first step,
he's different.
He's so quick. It's been a while since the Giants had an edge rusher that gets off the line like just as quickly as he does. And powerfully.
Someone said it at their press conference today or in an interview that he was the quickest big guy he's ever played with. Did I hear Isaiah Simmons say that when he was on the side talking to reporters? Maybe
I wasn't
it might
there
have
for
been.
that.
Yeah, I walked over there while it was at the end of Andrew Thomas's media availability, and Isaiah Simmons was kind of on the side.
Yeah.
And I think he basically said that Burns is the most athletic, large person that he's ever been around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. I mean, at his size, 6'5", 255, right? Is that what he's listed at? For him
around
to
that,
move and bend the way he can, it's just going to be hard to block him.
Yeah, and it's going to just mean very good things for the rest of the pass rush. I mean, again, the last couple of months we've been talking about how the addition of Burns is going to take some attention off of either Dexter Lawrence or Kayvon Thibodeau on every play. You can't double team all three of those guys every play. You just don't have enough guys blocking to be able to do that unless you have two receivers going out for passes.
201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. You're listening to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Go subscribe and watch the Giants Huddle podcast, folks. A lot of great stuff up there right now. You have our next segment in the top 100. We got up very quickly after the episode last night. The Giants Huddle podcast talking about what happened in episode 4 of Hard Knocks. So go check that out. That's why Matt and I aren't going to give you our full breakdown of Hard Knocks now. If you want that, go check out the Giants Huddle podcast. We went about a half an hour on that podcast talking about everything that happened at Hard Knocks. You're welcome to call us and talk about it too. And we'll talk about it later in the show, I'm sure, as we get calls about it. But if you want a full breakdown of what happened in episode 4, which really was just fascinating, leading up to basically the minute the draft starts, from pro days up until the minute the draft starts. It was a really good episode. A lot of good stuff in there. Go check that out in the Giants Huddle podcast. Favorite podcast platform, Giants app, giants.com/podcast. All right, let's go to the phones at 201-939-4513. Let's lead it off with Dan in the Poconos. Dan, what's going on?
Hey, John. Hey, Matt. How you guys doing?
What up?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just a couple of quick questions. Well, I got the lowdown you said from about Evan. Is this a new injury?
No, I mean, I think it all goes back related to his foot ankle that he had at the end of last year.
Okay, because I remember listening to the interview. He was on one of the podcasts that you had, right? When
Yep.
you had all the offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been frustrated, and just like so many other people, including him. But listening to him during that short interview, and I was like, oh man, you just want this kid to stay healthy, to see, just give the kid a break. And so I was, well, it's good. So it's not, and I did hear what Joe Shane said. So it's not, a major setback or anything.
Yeah, and Dan, that's why you have to make sure he's good too. You don't want to rush him back, and he's playing on a bad wheel. Then you're not going to get the best out of him. As much as it stinks, and I hate it, because we've talked about all summer about trying to get what you think is going to be the starting offensive line together as quickly as possible. I still think that's extremely important. I want to see it, but you cannot rush him back when he's not ready. He can either re-injure himself, or he's not going to play as well as you want him to play, and then that doesn't help anything.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Let me just throw one thing out there, and then I got two quick questions for you guys.
Yeah.
How much I've been enjoying that, the Giants 100 players, each episode, with the 99, 100 to 90. I know they're down to like 60 now. The last one was with Brandon Jacobs, right? And I forgot who the other one was, but I mean, I've been
Jim Burt,
like,
I think he was
that.
Brandon Jacobs and Jim Burt, I think, were on there together.
Right, yeah, Jim Burt, yeah. Oh, they've just been great. Oh, I've just been loving it. Okay, so I got two quick BBLK roster questions here. I know Lance has been gone for a while, but Matt is definitely, nice to have a Giant fan in there too, because it's obvious he's a Giants fan. But I was curious if he was coming back during the regular season, or he's just now Lance is out of here.
Oh no, I mean, Dan, I've talked about it on a couple of shows over the summer. Basically, what we've tried to do in-house, our bosses, is try to use some of the guys we have in the building every day a little bit more, and some of the people that are already here. So you're going to have actually some people on the show in September that I think will surprise some people and get people excited, that I won't tell you who they are now, but we'll get there. Okay. And we love Lance. We think he's great. We have nothing against Lance. We just wanted to rotate some more people in-house, and there's still a chance that he might be back in some capacity down the road in some way. It's not like get him out of here, we don't want him on the air anymore. Like we like Lance, but right now we kind of have our group, and we're going to stick with it, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Sounds good. I just remember the old days when him and Paulie would go at it. They would just keep going, man. And they would just like never, ever, ever agree. You know, they just it was great.
Well, see, Dan, what I'm trying to do, I'm really trying to build some animosity between Citak and Dottino because I miss some of that. So I'm honestly going to try to do some sabotage. So maybe I'll do some things to Paul's stuff and I'll leave some clues so he thinks it's Matt and vice versa. So I'm working on that so we get a little bit more hostility on these shows because I do think we're missing some of the hostility. To be honest,
all you have to do is call in, pretend to be a caller, and bring up PFF, and that should get Paul and I going.
You know what? Actually, in all seriousness, if you really want to do it, because Citak loves PFF probably even more than I do. So if we can get them going at it on PFF on a show, that'll get it going. That's not a bad idea.
And what about our dear friend Madeline Burke? She's gone too, huh?
No, Madeline has never done stuff with us in the off season. So come the regular season, she's around. Madeline was at practice today.
Good, great. That's good to hear. All right, guys, keep up the good work. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank
Always
you.
good to talk to you, my friend. Let's go to Tim in Charleston. He wants to talk about the O-line. Tim, what's going on?
Hey, Matt and John, how you doing?
We're good, buddy.
Good. What's going on?
All right. Well, you already answered my Neil Illuminor question, so I can skip that. The one thing I'll just add to it is that it would be nice if Azudu could build into a competent swing tackle just so we have a little more depth there.
And not even just swing tackle, Tim. If he could back up 4 offensive line positions, because we know he's played guard before, that's a really valuable guy to have on your roster. So we'll see if he's frankly good enough to be that guy.
I'm comfortable with him at guard. I don't feel he's great, but I'm comfortable at least. But one thing I wanted to ask you, John, is I know you were gone for 2 weeks. Did you see my email about the game-by-game breakdown?
Yes, I'm not sure I opened it. I'm happy you called me to remind me about it because I remember seeing it, but I don't think I've opened it.
I can resend it to you if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go over that because I break down the season every year 2 ways. One, I look at each game, and I do a win-loss, whether I think it's a win or a loss or a win/loss. This year I refined it a little more to give them a loss is a 0, an LW meaning more likely loss is a 25% chance, a 1 in 4 chance, and then a 50-50, and then a 75% chance. Anyway, so I don't want to go into that whole nitty-gritty until you get a chance to look at it, so I don't have to explain too much. And then I also break it down by division. So what I want to do is just quickly run through the way I looked at the season because it's interesting. I came out with on the other one, the game by game, I came out with a projection of like 8.75 wins, which kind of my gut feeling was 8 or 9, assuming we can stay relatively healthy. But by division, I broke it down that I have us at this point anyway in the East 3-3, which means I want to beat Dallas in that Week 4 game. I want to beat them at home and give them something to think about on Thanksgiving. But 3-3 in the South, NFC South, I have us 3-1. Which team beats us? I don't know. Tampa, who knows? In the AFC North, I have us only 1-3. But then in our 3 divisional games where we play the slotted team, I have us. We know we got to beat the Vikings Week 1, so I have to have the Vikings as a win. And I have a feeling that the game at Seattle, with all the changes they've gone through there, if we're having a relatively good season, I think that makes us strong, especially after hearing Paul's podcast with the guy who covers Seattle.
At Seattle is always a tough game, Tim. That is a tough place to win.
I know. It always has been. It's been a horror show for us. I'd never pick us out there. But it was. I actually had it as like a split, but then, more leaning toward them. But then after I heard Paul's interview with the guy who covers the team, I was like, damn, they have a lot of weaknesses we could exploit. And then I have us winning that rematch of the greatest game ever played against Indianapolis. So oddly, even though my breakdown game by game came out at 8.75, my season, if I was right, which is unlikely, is 10-7, which would be incredible. But I don't know. I just kind of wanted to share that with you because that's easier to explain in a quick phone call until you get a chance to read the other one. I don't remember the last. One other thing I just wanted to throw you guys a compliment. One reason I love to call in when the two of you are on is because you guys have superior listening skills, and you don't conflate what I'm saying with what you, in your mind, think is what I'm saying. You pretty much always get it right. I mean, you might not address every point, but you get it right. And a lot of other times, it's like, you hear all the shows, so you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I just wanted to throw you guys that bone. And also, I feel bad because I always seem to address you, John. So I'm going to come up with a question that's going to be specifically for Matt Citak, based on some of his wonderful writings on the app.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do you have any general comments, Matt, on what Tim had to say? Thank you, Tim. Appreciate the call.
I like that last little bit a lot. I mean, I am a pretty good listener. My wife seems to think so most of the time, at least.
Most of the time. Well, you guys are still
I can't lie.
You guys are still almost literally in your honeymoon phase right now. So you guys shouldn't have any problems there. You guys should be pretty good.
3 months in?
Yeah. If you're having problems 3 months in, it's a problem. How many years you guys dating before you got married?
About a year and a half.
Okay, so not that long. So you guys met in college or?
No, sorry. 2 years.
You guys met after college?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm 31.
Oh, you 31?
Yeah, I'm 31.
Jesus, I thought you were younger than that.
No, I've been here. This is my 6th season.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Man,
time
things
flies.
go fast.
Pearson and I started 6 seasons ago.
And Pearson, you're at 29?
He's a little younger.
29.
29.
About to turn 30.
Very good. Excellent. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Donnie in Queens. He's up next. Donnie.
Good afternoon, guys.
How are you,
doing
buddy?
today?
We're good.
I told myself I was going to stay off Twitter this training camp, specifically to not see stuff like happened with Jermaine today.
And you have failed on day one. Congratulations. Good work.
I failed before practice started. My call is about Hard Knocks last night.
Sure.
And I want to just give the caveat that, we're definitely seeing a small sample of, probably a larger conversation. But I did think that they gave us a pretty good insight into, exactly what the Giants were thinking heading into that day one, that Thursday night. And it seemed to me that once the quarterback situation kind of presented itself, that, that wasn't going to be an option. Clearly they weren't interested in the other guys that went in the first round, and that's totally fine. But it did seem from that point on, they shifted to somewhat of a narrow-minded focus where they were going to leave that night with a wide receiver or a pass catcher, for that matter, essentially under any circumstances. And I really thought the idea that they might have traded with Chicago down to 9 in hopes of getting Rome there with the backup plan on balance was flawed. In the sense that, just from the position of value standpoint, to pick up an extra 3rd or 4th round pick, to lose out on a wideout for a tight end, to me really seemed like flawed thought process there.
Well, remember, Donnie, they said they had the deal in place. That doesn't necessarily mean they were going to make it if those both guys were gone. It was an option for them if they were both gone.
Well, I think that the caveat was that they were going to do it provided Chicago was taking an offensive tackle.
Correct.
Now, even if Chicago was going to do that, though, they would have left themselves open at 7 and 8 for someone to leapfrog them for Rome.
The Titans and Falcons at 7 and 8. Which, by the way, I think looking back, it doesn't look like either of those teams were likely to move out of those spots.
I mean, Atlanta definitely not. They were standing pat and taking Michael Penix at 8. Tennessee, I mean, I guess there is a chance, but like they with how the first 6 picks went. Other teams had an opportunity to move up to 7 to try to get Rome Odunze. No one did.
They wound up with Latham at 7.
Yeah.
But we
knew they were taking an offensive tackle.
Right,
just
but
didn't know where.
Here's the question, though: what if both Latham and the Notre Dame kid were both off the board when they would have picked at 7? Because that could have been the case, right? If the Giants move out,
because the Giants wouldn't have moved there.
Alt would have been still there.
No, Alt got picked by the Chargers.
I know.
But if the Giants would have moved out of 6 with the Bears moved from 9 to 6 and pick Latham, then both Latham and Alt would have been off the board for Tennessee
and
at 7.
And the Giants wouldn't have traded John. The Giants would have gotten a receiver at 6.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't have traded.
Oh, that makes sense because Alt would have been there because he wouldn't got picked by San Diego. Okay, no, that makes sense. I'm sorry. You're right.
Just to not get off track, though, the Giants couldn't know what was going to happen. right
sure.
after them. So
For sure.
to me, to take the risk.
And by the way, Donnie, John Mara made that point in that meeting, right? He even said, Tennessee could use a wide receiver too, right?
Right, and to me, like to risk like me losing Rome over a third and a fourth round pick, like. Look, I love the draft. I follow everything you guys do. We all get hyped up for it. When you go back year after year, those third and fourth round picks, the odds are just slim that that they turn into much. So I just thought that they had a narrow-minded focus. And again, maybe there's more that meets the eye here than they had more interest in Alt and Latham, but it just felt like, all right, we're either getting a quarterback or a wide receiver, and even if we really have to, worst case scenario, we'll just take a different pass catcher, the tight end at 9. And it just, I hate to say it because I think these guys are a lot better, but it kind of reminded me of the Kadarius Toney draft where it just seemed that Gettleman was hell-bent on a wideout in that draft, and when it didn't happen, moved back to 20, and we know how the results went.
Yeah, but Donnie, the difference is, and I can bring up my draft board. I had Dunze and Bowers pretty much right next to each other on my draft board, and I had both of them as top 10 players, so I think you can make the argument that, yes, they wanted a pass catcher, but they only wanted pass catchers that they considered value at that pick. I mean, Bowers got picked, 2 picks later? The Raiders picked him at 12, 13?
12 or 13,
something like that. So, I think, to me, those guys were worthy of top 10 picks. Like, if they would have had the conversation, all right, we trade down to 9, and if Rome's not there, then we'll pick the Brian Thomas Jr. Then I would be like, all right, well, yeah, then you're just picking a position. You're not picking the best player. I would have had a problem with that, but I felt good enough, and I feel strongly enough about Odunze and Bowers as players, regardless of position, that I would have been fine picking one of those players at 9, 10, or 11 in this draft, to be honest with you.
And it seemed like the Joe Shane felt the same exact way. I mean, obviously, we don't know what the draft board actually looked like, but the fact that as he was going through those, possible scenarios with Mr. Mara, Mr. Tisch, and said, like, if we move down to 9, we're going to get either Odunze or Brock Bowers. Clearly, that meant that they were very, very close on their draft board, where they would have been totally comfortable if they had made that trade with coming out of the draft with either one of them.
And Donnie, by the way, I agree with you. I'm not sure a 3 and a 4 would have been enough for me to move out of 6 to potentially lose out on the wide receiver. I'm not sure I would have made that trade either, to be honest with you. Yeah. No, I hear you.
It's not worth it. And my last thing, on a human level, look, Daniel's been a polarizing guy here for a few years, but just on a human level, if you're not rooting for Daniel Jones this year, just turn in your jersey, because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Give the kid a chance. Don't boom the first possession of the season at home if they go 3 and out. I mean, he's been dragged through the kind of the ringer here based on what's around him, and now he's dealing with essentially, a public flirtation with being replaced on the job. It is what it is. It's part of the business, but if you're a Giants fan, just root for the kid this year and let the chips fall where they may.
Donnie, no problem. And by the way, follow your own advice. Stay off of Twitter. Because there's enough fans out there that aren't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But just stay off Twitter, Donnie. Trust me, we talked about it at the end of the show yesterday. Just stay off. It's not going to do you any good. And Daniel, no surprise, handled that question again really well today when asked about the Giants, how to make you feel that they try to trade up for a quarterback. He goes, look, I didn't love it. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it is what it is. I'm locked in. I'm focused to try to have a really good year.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but especially today, seeing Daniel speak to the media, he just seemed like he was more confident up there.
More so than he did when we spoke in the spring,
sort of
for
felt
sure.
like he just had a different energy about him, where he was had the mentality of I don't really care what anyone thinks. I'm going to go out there and do my thing.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily confidence is one way. He just seemed more relaxed.
Yeah,
to me,
for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
that was something I was planning on bringing up at some point during the show. This term that's going on, trending in social media terms, aura. He just has a different aura about him right now, and I hope it shows on the field throughout practices, preseason, leading up to the start of the season. But just seeing how he was with the media today, he definitely feels like he just has a different sort of aura around him.
Is aura a social media thing?
Yeah. Pearson knows, yeah.
Is it like a definition beyond what I would normally think of aura, or is it just the traditional definition of aura?
It's pretty much the traditional one. A little bit like swag has swag or something like that.
I think should we try to get the Tina to start trying to use those terms? Is it interchangeable with X Factor? No?
Not quite. And the other thing I just want to really quickly touch on, look, if the Giants were to have traded down with Chicago in that hypothetical trade to get a third and a fourth round pick, like you said, you don't know if the value would have been there. I have to disagree. I think that in our like Giants bubble, we can only think about our like the last like 10 years of draft history of what many third and fourth round picks have been. And I'm talking about before Brian Dable and Joe Shane got here. I think that's sort of clouded what those mid-round picks could actually turn out to be. Obviously, you have less of a hit rate when you get to, the second half of day 2 and the beginning part of day 3.
And a lower ceiling.
No one's going to deny that.
Mm-hmm.
But that is still an area of the draft where you can get some very good contributors. I mean, let's not forget, 2019, Julian Love was a fourth-round pick. He's now, obviously, he left last offseason, went to Seattle, and made his first Pro Bowl. Darius Slayton was a fifth-round pick. And I think it's clear that he's exceeded his expectations as a fifth-round pick in his first 5 seasons. So, of course, if they were to move down 3 spots...
I can list a lot of other players just for the record.
100%. I mean, I'm looking at the whole list here. There's a reason I picked those guys.
Yes, I know there are.
But again, that's what I'm saying. The recent history, I feel like, has sort of clouded our judgment when talking about those third and fourth round picks. I mean, the teams this past season that really took a big step, Detroit, or the last couple of years, Detroit, Seattle, the Rams, a big reason why they made the jump into playoff teams was because they hit on those mid-round picks. Guys like Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Reek Woolen for Seattle, like those are guys drafted third round and later and turned into very good starters for those teams and played a very big part in helping turn them into playoff teams. So I just want to say, obviously, third and fourth round picks, much lower hit rate. And if you were to move down 3 spots in the top 10, obviously you would want to get more than just a third and a fourth round pick. But I don't think, I think that would have been fair value. And I think, personally, the Giants still would have had a very good chance of getting Rome Odunze. And even if they didn't, if Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison were gone, I would have been okay with doing that trade and taking Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is the best tight end prospect in recent memory. And in case anyone forgot, Darren Waller retired. He
hadn't retired.
He hadn't retired at the time, of course, but he did end up retiring. He's not here right now, which made the Giants sort of protected themselves a little bit by drafting Theo Johnson, which was a great value in the 4th round. But regardless, tight end ended up being a position where they did have to fill.
So let's say the picks would have been 75 and 122. All right, I'm actually going to do the trade chart here. So 75 has a value of 215. 122 has a value of 50. So that would put it at 270. The difference between 6 and 9, it's 250 on the trade chart. So it about adds up right. If you had those two guys ranked identically on your board, and they were, in fairness, for me, they were right next to each other, and you have pretty good intel that you should be able to get your guy anyway. Obviously, if you could pick up 2 picks and you're getting the same guy, regardless, you make the trade. It makes sense. But there is some risk there. I mean, what happens?
For sure.
And you don't know at the time. What if 2 teams trade up and you lose Odunze and Bowers?
Look, obviously that could have happened. That could have. But at the same time, if the situation played where the Giants were then looking to potentially trade the pick with, meaning Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors both went 4 and 5, who's to say that another team wouldn't have called up trying to move up for Joe Alt at 6 and offered way more than the Bears? Like we saw in that the trailer for the next episode of Hard Knocks, the Jets came calling. I think obviously it was probably for Malik Neighbors, but they ended up taking Fashanu with their 1st round pick. So clearly offensive tackle was a big need for them. Who's to say if Joe Alt wasn't sitting there that the Jets weren't going to call up and offer a humongous trade package to move up for him? And then you move down to 10 and sort of in the same situation where you're hoping and most likely will get one of Odunze or Brock Bowers. I feel like that easily could have happened if the first 5 picks played out in that situation where the Giants were looking to potentially then trade down.
I'm also not convinced that the Bears would trade up for a tackle, and they wouldn't trade up for a wide receiver. I'm not fully convinced on that either.
You mean with the situation that Joe mapped out?
Yeah, I'm not convinced that if they wanted to trade up, they'd be trading up for a tackle and not a wide receiver.
I don't know. They got Keenan Allen. They have DJ Moore, and they just went and drafted Caleb Williams.
Yeah, they literally
with the first pick.
literally drafted a wide receiver at 9 instead of an offensive lineman.
But if they had a chance, I fully understand that. But where they were, the top 2 tackles were both gone by the time they were on the clock.
Well, I mean, not everyone though. Not everyone had Latham as their number 2 tackle.
But Joe Alt was the number 1 tackle for everyone, and he was gone. If they had a chance to go up and get the best offensive lineman in the draft, a guy that a lot of people think is going to be, potentially an All-Pro or a Pro Bowl tackle, to get that guy to protect your new rookie franchise quarterback, number 1 overall pick.
I get it.
After you already got Keenan Allen and the year before DJ Moore.
Allen's only on a 1-year deal, though. Remember that.
Sure, but still, it's not like they don't have any depth there. They had DJ Moore. They have Keenan Allen. Say what you want, but they still have Darnell Mooney is still there.
No, Mooney went to
Did he?
Carolina. He went somewhere down there in the NFC South, I think, or NFC North, maybe.
I mean, look, I love Odunze, and I think the Bears made the right pick taking him where they did. But if Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors went 4 and 5,
Falcons for Mooney.
If I'm the Bears, I am moving up to try to get Joe Alt to protect my number 1 pick in Caleb Williams, the guy that they want to be their quarterback for the next 15 to 20 years. I think that would have been like a no doubt, not even think about it situation if I'm Chicago. Obviously, we'll never know because the things played out where Alt went 5 and then the Giants were never going to move out of 6. They wanted Malik Neighbors. But if I'm Chicago and I had a choice between Rome Odunze or Joe Alt, even if it cost some draft capital to go up and get Alt, I'm protecting my number 1 pick. My franchise quarterback.
Well, let me ask
thinking twice.
Straight up. And you were an Odunze fan. You loved Odunze. Didn't you have him at Neighbors?
No. I had thought Neighbors was very slightly better. I thought Odunze would be the pick for kind of what we saw in last night's episode with just how he is as a leader and high quality character.
So if I told you heading into the draft that just in terms of value, I will trade you Brock Bowers a 3 and a 4 for Rome Odunze. Would you make that trade?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would.
Fair enough. That's why that's a good question.
I mean, as you said,
honestly, for me, it's close. That would be a really, 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 really tough decision. I would be on the fence about that.
So what about if, prior to the draft, you knew Darren Waller was retiring?
Yeah, that wouldn't affect me much, to be honest with you, because he would be he was in a short-term situation anyway, or maybe have him for 1 more year, so that wouldn't really impact my decision making much.
All right. I just think, what you said before, that
3 and a 4.
You didn't have Odunze. You had Odunze and Brock Bowers very close to each other. Clearly, so did Joe Shane.
If it was a 2, I'd do it.
I mean, if Chicago didn't have a 2, otherwise,
I know they didn't.
Otherwise,
right.
I feel like that definitely would have been the offer, the 2 to move up from 9 to 6, but they didn't have that pick.
They didn't have that pick. Yeah, interesting. Now, look, I think in that vacuum, just breaking it down that simply, a 3 and a 4 and Bowers for Odunze. I mean, I think I went back, and if you look at I might have had they're either one's right in front of the other one. They were literally next to each other on my rankings. I think there were players 8 and 9 on my board, something like that. 9 and 10, 7 and 8, somewhere in that area. But they were back to back, right next to each other. But I do think wide receiver is a more valuable position, just in terms of general.
No argument there.
It's close. I think that's a real interesting conversation, to be honest with you.
But the other reason why I would have been comfortable doing that is because, and we spoke about this leading up to the draft, just how deep the wide receiver position was in this draft.
And then
they were guys selected, like with that third round. Let's say the Giants did that trade, and then still took Nubin in the second round. With that third round pick, Jermaine Burton.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the character stuff he would fit here, but yes, I understand your point.
I'm just saying he was the next wide receiver taken. Roman Wilson,
Roman Wilson would have been a good one. McMillan,
and who's to say that
and the Oregon receiver was still there too.
Wouldn't have packaged 3 and 4 to move up to take a wide receiver in the second round or something.
I'm already out of draft mode. Who was the Oregon wide receiver that I love so much that ended up going in the 4th round, and I couldn't understand why to Denver? Start of the 4th round, went to the Broncos. The Oregon wide receiver. Troy Franklin. Yeah, he was still there, too.
I
would
would
love to have him in the 3rd round. So, I'm with you.
If
That's
they
all
had
fair
picked
points.
up those extra picks, I wouldn't have been surprised if they then moved up to try to get, a different wide receiver. Malachi Corley, who the Jets ended up taking with the first pick in the 3rd round, obviously would have required them to move up a little bit, but that could have been a pick. Adonai Mitchell was the 52nd pick. They would have still come out of the, day 2.
You also could have picked
wide receiver.
You also could have picked him instead of Newbin and tried to get Newbin in the 3rd round too, if you wanted to. You could always do that if you wanted to take it that direction.
Yeah, that's true. But they clearly had Newbin very, very high up.
Yeah, not many safeties went after that though, which is why I think you might have a chance to make that
Bullard,
type of move. Yeah,
Bullard went 10 picks later, and then Bishop wasn't that far down. Speaking of, but as we're just on the Hard Knocks, and this is something that we somewhat brought up in the podcast, but not fully. We spoke about how Brian Daboll said he spoke to Nick Saban, and Nick Saban said, those guys are problems, talking about Neighbors and Brock Bowers. But the other thing, which I forgot about when we recorded the podcast, is if you remember the ESPN's draft coverage that weekend, Nick Saban was on, and he said Tyler Nubin is the best safety in this draft.
Oh, did he? I didn't realize that. Okay.
Looking back, after seeing that Hard Knocks clip of Daboll, saying, yeah, Saban told me Neighbors and Bowers were the 2 biggest problems. Clearly, Brian Daboll and Nick Saban had some conversations about the prospects in this year's draft. And based on the conversation we saw in Hard Knocks, clearly Saban giving Brian Daboll and the Giants, his stamp of approval on Tyler Nubin, that probably played at least somewhat of a role in the Giants picking him in the 2nd round.
Let's go to Marcus in Arizona. Marcus, what's going on?
What's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Marcus. What's up?
We got Neighbors. That's all I wanted in my draft. I'm happy. I think the only other person happier than me is Brian Daboll.
Nah, I think you're probably right, Marcus.
Loves Neighbors, dude. Other thing, I hope you guys are well and come into MetLife for my first game, Week 4, Thursday Night Football.
Nice.
Let's go, Giants.
That's awesome.
Cannot wait. Last year was going to be my first year coming. I was going to go Monday night, Week 1. So glad I didn't.
Nah.
Probably would have never went to another Giants game in my life. Other than that, let's go. Big faith. Let's do it this year. We got this.
Appreciate it, Marcus. Good stuff.
Thank you, Marcus.
Always risky, given the recent history, to pick a Giants-Cowboys game, by the way.
Well, it was the season opener.
Yes.
Coming off
correct.
a playoff win.
Well, he's picked the Cowboys again this year.
He likes the night games.
He does, yeah. He must like the primetime games, is right. 201-939-4513. Have a safe flight out from Arizona for that one, Marcus. Ron in New Jersey, he's up next. Hey, Ron.
Hey, guys. So I was at that game, the Dallas game last year with my wife and daughter, and we used the term PTSD to describe our experience.
Something tells me you didn't have your daughter there for all 4 quarters. Just a guess, Ron.
We made it 3.5 quarters.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Okay.
She takes the train to Hoboken, but yeah. So
okay.
anyway, quick call observation on Hard Knocks. I did not see last night's episode, but I'm enjoying it. I love the quarterback interviews in particular. I found that fascinating with working the whiteboard.
Well, then I would say, Ron, you will definitely enjoy episode 4 because there's a lot more with them interacting with the draft prospects I think you'll like.
Okay, good to know. In fact, all the content you guys put out, I wouldn't mind seeing some of that, like mid-season, breaking down some plays like that. But that, you'd have to do that in your huddle. But anyway, so I have to first confess I'm a retired lawyer, so this comment comes from that perspective. I was thrown off when Joe Shane was talking to Barkley directly. In my world, once you have a representative, an agent, you tell your client to not talk because the GM would, appeal to your emotions and whatnot. There's nothing against Joe Shane. I'm a huge fan. But was that for the drama of the show? Was that standing operating procedure? Do you guys know that?
Well, remember, he had just gotten off the phone with Barkley's agent. So he had talked to Barkley's agent first and told Barkley's agent that he was going to call Saquon. And I think it was probably a way for Joe Shane to try to show Barkley a level of respect, to talk to him, person to person, to relay that news one-on-one. and he basically told the agent what he was going to say to him. I mean, they've had so many. He's been here for so long. They've had so many conversations. It's pretty clear they had already made the Ring of Honor pitch to him, and be an all-time Giant, all that stuff. So that's my guess for why it wasn't a big deal, because they've already had those conversations before, dating back to the prior year when you had the franchise tag and all that stuff, and it was cleared through the agent. So I know what you're saying, and I know that's the thing with. I know that's the thing that the Cowboys go through a lot with their negotiations. Jerry Jones likes to call the players directly and try to hammer out those deals, and the agents don't really like that particularly, from what my understanding is. So
I can understand why the agent wouldn't like it.
But and look, we obviously don't know exactly how all of the free agent negotiations go. But I will say, when it comes to Saquon Barkley, clearly it's a little different than just your stereotypical pending free agent. I mean, the guy has been here 6 years, was a team captain. He was the longest tenured player on the team last year, or Sterling Shepard. But
I understand all that.
So I think as John said, I think he was trying to show Saquon just a little bit of respect, and show, like, we're not just trying to treat you like any other free agent. Like, we understand and appreciate everything you've done. So I'm going to call you personally and tell you this.
I get that. To tell you the truth, I'd allow that if I was the agent, but I'd be on the phone. I get all that, but it is the business side of it.
And Ron, I think part of it too. Remember, the call was just telling him that he was not going to be tagged. So that was the purpose of the call.
Yeah, the call wasn't offensive.
Right, exactly.
It was. I was under the assumption that one just wasn't allowed to make those calls. I mean, you could call to say, "Hey, how's your family? How was your vacation?" But to talk about contract terms, I was just surprised by it. I found it insightful, and I love the show.
I mean, Ron, I think you're right. I bet you there are some agents that would tell their clients, we don't want you talking directly to them no matter what. I would not be surprised if that was the case for a lot of agents. Maybe Ed Berry operates differently. I can't speak to that.
Right. Yeah, I don't know which is right or wrong. That can be debated. I just was taken aback by that one. That was it. But I enjoyed the show. And thanks for the information on the practices. I'm actually coming out on August 1st and 20th for the first time.
Nice.
So to see some practices, and I'm looking forward to that.
Appreciate the call, Ron.
Keep up the good work, guys.
Good stuff. August 1st, that should be a padded practice next week, so that'll be a good day to be out here.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. Was it next Thursday?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
I don't think that far ahead. I'm in training camp. I am one day at a time, bro.
It's only day one. We're not quite yet in the stage where we don't even know what day it is. By next week, we definitely will be. Even by this weekend when we're here on Sunday.
That's the trick, right?
But day one, we're not quite there yet.
No, we're here Saturday, right? Sunday's the off day this weekend?
No, Saturday is off day.
I thought Sunday was the off day.
Nope.
It's back together Sunday.
Oh, okay. Well, I got that mixed up already.
We're here the next 2 Saturdays. There are no practice, but there will be practice the next 2 Sundays.
Okay, so that's what we're doing. All right, fair enough. See, all right, I already got one thing messed up. There we go. Good stuff. Hopefully, I have it in my calendar.
We call it training camp brain.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Every day is the same. All right. Any other comments on Hard Knocks before we get to before we wrap this thing up, Matt?
About Hard Knocks. No, I'm excited for the last episode. I'm interested to see what exactly they show on draft night.
Yeah. Any final trade calls and
that's
deals?
the thing I'm most interested to see. I mean, I know I brought this up, I think, on the first time we did the huddle reaction to episode 3 of Hard Knocks, about how I really like the movie Draft Day, and how the GMs are calling each other in the moment. And we've heard, or at least I've heard stories, GMs talking about how some other GMs will call them when they're up on the clock. Not a lot of time. Some of the time in jest, like just to kind of mess with them a little bit.
Yep.
But I don't know, maybe that happens with here, but I don't think that would happen. But I'm excited just to see, if they show, or if it happened, teams trying to call, like in the moment, trying to call and set up a trade to move up. I mean, I know I mentioned it before in the teaser for the next episode. They teased that the Jets and Joe Douglas call to try to get some sort of trade done to move up, which obviously, as we know, did not happen. But I'm interested to see if that happened, not even only on night 1, but throughout the whole draft, what those in the moment draft calls between GMs are like, and if we're going to hear any. I'm just excited to see that.
And I wonder if they're going to talk about what other guys were options for them in the second and third rounds the way they did in the first. Because obviously you can't do that planning ahead of time. There's too many picks ahead and you can't figure that out. But, there's a night off between Thursday and Friday. What does that look like for a team, right? You go home, you're kind of reset for day 2, rounds 2 and 3. How many calls come in during the day? How crazy is Friday afternoon as teams kind of decide what they want to do in round 2 and 3? I think that's going to be interesting to see too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it was this week's episode of the Hard Knocks podcast that Peter Schrager hosts and has Joe on. I believe it was there where Joe said that if they had traded the other second round pick to Carolina for Brian Burns, that they might have targeted cornerback in the second round instead of safety. So I'm interested to see, if they show going into day 2 of the draft, if, or who exactly was players they were targeting, players that they had their eye on, hoping would drop. I mean, obviously the start of the second round is pick 33 and they were sitting at 47. So that's a decent amount of picks where you don't know who's going before you get on the clock. So yeah, I'm interested to see if they'll show other players that they might have been targeted like they did in the first round, or if they kind of just narrow it down to kind of only showing the interest in the guys that the Giants actually did end up taking.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and find out. For Matt Citak, I'm John Schmeelk. Thanks for joining us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Don't forget, folks, run or walk or trot or do whatever you do with Giant Legends. The Giants are hosting a 5K race. Make sure you go check that out. Go to giants.com/5K. You can run or walk with Giants Legends, presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th, 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative t-shirt after the race. Stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants Legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. For Matt, I'm Schmeelk. We'll see you next time. Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Good sleep should come naturally, and with a new Natural Hybrid mattress, it can. A collaboration between Lisa and West Elm, the Natural Hybrid is expertly crafted from natural latex, natural wool, and certified safe foams to elevate your sleep sanctuary and support a greener tomorrow. Breathable organic cotton and moisture-wicking Joma wool consistently provide cool and comfortable slumber. Every purchase helps fuel Lisa's work with shelters and those in need. Visit lisa.com to learn more. That's LEESA.com.
You never want to find yourself out on the water fishing without the essentials. So it's best to always pack a Columbia PFG Solar Stream Elite hoodie to protect against the sun. I mean, it provides great protection and it's really breathable so you don't get hot. That's a win-win. Columbia PFG has a lot of great gear. So before you head out on the water, head over to Columbia.com/PFG to shop their performance fishing gear.